As conversations around canceling student debt continue to heat up, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez weighed in on her Instagram story this weekend. When asked how canceling student debt helps those who've already paid off their loans, she replied in part, quote, "Well, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Not every program has to be for everybody. It all comes around. It's okay. We can support things we won't directly benefit from."
Real Clear Politics White House reporter Philip Wegman adds, quote, "The White House does not, meanwhile, have an answer for those who paid off their loans already or hustled to avoid said loans as Biden mulls loan forgiveness."
Yeah, no, right. This is a line I've trotted out in opposition to this policy, and I know how you have your response. Go ahead.
Well, look, I am one of those people. I'm in both camps, right? And I hate to keep putting myself in the middle of this, but the reality is I have paid more than the balance of my $180,000 loan. Because of the nature of interest, an 8% interest rate. I have paid $180,000.
Every time you say it, it hurts me.
And I'm not getting any of that money back. I'm someone who, paid more than the minimum on my 10-year payment plan because I was trying to get ahead of it. I hustled, I scrapped, I did all the things you were supposed to do. But at the end of the day, the question, I don't care about what's in the past. And even if I have paid off my loans by the time any one of these policies comes to fruition, I'll be happy that people don't have to be in the same situation I am. It's always the case that new government policies, whether it's the innovation of Social Security or Medicaid or any number of policies that are enormously popular, there were people who died or went into retirement or suffered a year or 2 or 6 months before the policy that don't get the advantage of that. And nowhere are we asking why so many people in my generation have forgone buying mortgages, having kids, all these traditional milestones, in part because of their student loan balance. At no point are we saying, well, we shouldn't pay into supporting public schools. We shouldn't pay into the tax base. We shouldn't pay into support of military intervention.
I said all those things. I said all those things just this morning.
Well, I don't. So the left is my point, is being very ideologically consistent. And there's a real kind of, I think, anti-patriotic approach to policy that I don't expect, especially from so many liberals who say they support these kinds of things. And the last point I would just make about this is I would love it to be retroactive. I would love for all kinds of things to happen. But the reason we're talking about this specific policy is not because anyone believes it's the perfect policy for the moment. It's because Biden and the conservative Democrats have made it clear that we're not passing anything when it comes to child tax relief and any other stuff that is higher on the agenda because we can't get the Senate on board. This is something Biden can do with his executive authority. This is what's on the table, so he should do it.
But another issue with it being that you still, the government can't repossess the credential you got from having taken out this loan, right? Which gives you not everyone, because some of them are really bad credentials, but gives you who has this debt, as long as you did finish. If you didn't finish, doubly screwed.
That's a big issue. Something like 40% of people with student debt didn't finish. And so there's this conversation about how, most Americans don't have a college degree, but most Americans did do some college. And the problem is that there's so many people who paid all of that money, weren't able to finish for various reasons, many of them financial in nature, financial hardship, and now we're still forced to pay back that loans with interest without the ability to have increased earning potential.
Yeah, I'll read. So J.D. Vance, a candidate I don't particularly care for, had a statement on this that I mostly agreed. Let me pull it up.
I remember that one.
He said, the basic thing is that the student debt system, frankly, the entire college education system in this country has become incredibly corrupt. Let me give you an example. One of our biggest supporters used to work in the admissions office, I won't say which school, in southwestern Ohio. Basically, they would admit people knowing they could never complete the degree program. They were saddled with a ton of debt. They would give them fake scholarships to make the debt burden seem not as high as the sticker price. And then, of course, all the people that they knew could never complete the program, never completed the program. I think the problem with student debt forgiveness on the backs of taxpayers is that it basically doesn't force any reform to that incredibly corrupt system. It's in some ways a bailout for the people who are causing the problem. It's one of these things where if you do it, you'll help a lot of young kids right now, but you'll hurt the next 20 years of young kids who are exposed to an even more corrupt, even more inflated system. So I think there are a lot of things that we should do, that we should be thinking about doing. One, make student loans dischargeable in bankruptcy. I absolutely agree with that. Two, something like a large university endowment tax and fund some student loan support through that. But anything that doesn't go at the universities, I think, is not just papering over the real problem, but actually making that problem worse.
So of course, those are all good ideas. Ideas, by the way, that I never heard J.D. Vance say anything about before this moment. He put out a dumb tweet that I talked about on my radar last week about how we shouldn't support student debt, and I think got a lot of pushback, good pushback. And so now he's pivoted to saying, well, we have to address the system. We would all love to address the system, and if we wanted to address the system, maybe some folks should have voted for Bernie Sanders, who wanted to make public colleges and universities tuition free and unwind the perverse incentives that you articulated, which are that all of these 18-year-olds with no collateral or any ability to show that there's going to be support for this loan, that they're going to be able to pay back this loan, are given hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to college because they are federally guaranteed loans. These banks have no exposure. Oftentimes it's the federal government who's the issuer. There are these for-profit institutions like Soave, these refinancing companies that are making an arm and a leg off of this. It's Soave, by the way, that has recommended that Joe Biden only cancel $10,000 of debt. This is something that they want because they understand that they can continue to profit if he cancels just what amounts to interest payments for 1 year, but then ends the moratorium so they can continue to build up the balances and make a profit and push people into refinancing, which they profit from, right? All of that, is a problem and would be solved by fundamentally overhauling our education system. But again, none of these people supported it when Bernie Sanders was advocating for it. Nobody was supporting it before this moment. They're only talking about this to pivot away from the fundamental issue that this is what Joe Biden can do in the moment. This is what he can do. He cannot make public colleges and universities tuition free. If J.D. Vance wants that, he should be putting pressure on Republicans in Congress to back that kind of legislation, and I'm sure we could all get behind it.
I don't think they should be free. I think they should be affordable. If it's a public university, then it should be affordable to the...
Affordable to whom?
To the taxpayers of that state. To the people who pay money into it. It should be affordable. The state legislature should lower the price.
So what should the price be for someone who's earning a minimum wage, which is less than $20,000 a year?
You should be able to work and to pay for it the way most people were able to do until 30 years ago.
Well, 30 years ago, many fewer people went to college. Right. So most people still, even when colleges were much cheaper than they are today, were not able to go.
Much of the price is administrative bloat. You could fire everyone who works in the student life diversity sustainability office. In fact, you'd have a better experience if you got rid of those people because their only job is to turn young people into militant, woke, cancel culture. Well, I mean, these are not. This is the cancel culture problem does not have a lot of policy solutions, and in fact, I'm against most of the sort of rake Disney over the coals approach. But to the extent it is being fostered by bad administrators who cost a fortune in the university system. Yes, we can actually get rid of them. They work for a public institution. The taxpayers deserve scrutiny over how it is run. How it is run is bad, and it's just. I mean, we agree. It is a scam. Yes, they're selling a scam.
It is a scam, but I also don't want to lose focus of the fact that as a huge percentage, and again, I actually did today's episode of Bad Faith Podcast on this with an expert, a consumer debt expert, who went to community college himself and then transferred ultimately into Yale Law School, that a huge percentage of people with student debt are people who are going to community colleges, are people who went to exploitative for-profit universities, are people who got vocational degrees, which everyone acts like don't cost money when they cost a great deal. And those are the people we should be thinking about when we're considering whether or not people should have access to education. There was a time in this country where no one considered high school to be a right the way that we consider it to be now and paid out of the tax breaks. And the exact same arguments about it being a regressive policy applied to high school 100 years ago in the same way that we're talking about college now. And if we live in a country where all these people are going to require you to have a master's degree or at least a college degree to teach school and do all of these other kinds of things, then we have to be clear-eyed about making that education accessible, or reform things and stop asking people to jump through so many hoops to get a basic low-paying job.
Actually accessible would be, I guess, better than pretend accessible the way it is now, where it seems accessible and then you're screwed later.
100%.
But I would worry about, I want to stop creating incentives, systemic incentives for people to delay entering the workforce as long as possible.
Sure.
This doesn't seem healthy for our society that it more, no, now you need a graduate degree, you need a master's degree, you need a PhD, but there's no job, there are not enough jobs in
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So hopefully I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of proposals from our Republicans in Congress about how to reform our education system. But our Rising panel is next, where we'll discuss more details around Florida's controversial parental rights and education bill. Stick around.